I want to get right into it because Andrea Carter is going to join us in 15 minutes to talk about last night's title game, or yesterday afternoon's title game between Iowa and LSU. And the way I want to talk about this is formatting it this way. I want to do the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I think it's a great way to tackle the things that people are talking about and the things that, frankly, I think people should be talking about. And we'll talk about a lot more of them with Andrea. But to start, the good, what a tournament. What a tournament for the NCAA on the women's side. Men's tournament has been crazy too. Very different kind of tournament. So much chaos, so much disruption of what we thought was going to happen. It's pretty hilarious. Every office pool I'm a part of, like I haven't had points in what feels like 2 weeks. And the women, we saw South Carolina make the Final Four. We saw Caitlin Clark make it. LSU, certainly a team a lot of people had on their radar that gets there while also having more upsets than traditionally happen on the women's side. And the display of depth from LSU yesterday was something that I'll never forget. And we'll get to the officiating in the ugly category in a few. But the idea that Angel Reese and some of LSU's other stars wouldn't play a lot in the first half, and they would be up 17 points at halftime while Caitlin Clark was getting hers? Like, are you kidding me? LSU played the game of its season and probably the best game it'll play in a decade. And that's not a shot at LSU. Like, that's just a reality. They scored 102 points. And if you play that game at that pace, Iowa wins probably 7 or 8 of them. But LSU overcame all that by just shooting the you-know-what out of the ball. It was awesome. It was incredible to watch. It felt like a suspension of disbelief. And also awesome on the good category, hats off to Caitlin Clark. She had a real case for most outstanding player despite the loss. I'm perfectly fine with Angel Reese, double-double machine, very deserving most outstanding player getting it. But Clark averaged 31.8 points per game for the tournament. Her average three-point attempt was over 25 feet. She's one of the best passers I've ever seen, and the way she plays is the closest thing I've ever seen to Stephen Curry. With all the talk about her and Angel Reese and a lot of the other stuff that I'm going to talk about in a second, I really hope we don't lose sight of the fact that Caitlin Clark is a special, generational, if not once-in-a-lifetime basketball player. And that's not to say she's the greatest ever. What she isn't inherently better than Maya Moore or Sue Bird or Breanna Stewart or Cheryl Miller or whoever you want to talk about through history. But the specific mix of skills that she has and the way she leverages them is so special as someone who loves basketball. And I enjoyed the hell out of watching her. That was awesome. The bad in a good, bad, and ugly. Women's sports deserve more than the conversations we have about them. And that is a general statement from someone who has covered them consistently since I was 18 years old, which at this point at age 33 is nearly half my life. I started covering women's basketball in particular at MTSU when I was a freshman because that's what you did. Alicia Clark, now of the Las Vegas Aces and formerly of the Mystics the last 2 years, was the star player there. And not only were the women better than the men, they drew slightly bigger crowds and roughly the same interest level from a media coverage standpoint. It's just what you did. So with that said, the fact that I don't think we spend enough time talking about the games and the sports and the athletes, this discussion that has all of a sudden happened around Angel Reese yesterday and gone into today is a really important one. Conversations about race and class and misogyny and sexism and who gets to decide the rules of what's acceptable and what isn't in society are really, really important discussions. For the entire history of at least this country, it's been a pretty simple one. White men have. We've held the positions like this one, at the one that I'm doing right now, talking, commentating, and other iterations of it, newspaper columnist, radio and television commentator, and all the other commentary positions forever. We've also predominantly been in charge of the institutions, and we only let others participate on our timeline or under our rules or when there's enough outside pressure to push the boundaries and open doors. And now if that statement bothers you, I'd simply ask you to ask yourself, why? Are you still upholding those barriers? I understand there's an inherent defensiveness that comes when it feels like you're being attacked, but the way to be a part of the solution, which I think even most people who might feel defensive about that would say they want to do in theory. Do you want to be a part of the solution to race relations in America and the problems that we have with them? Yes. Do you think sports can help? Yes. Okay, well then take that feeling of defensiveness and let it pass. Listen to the people who have been hurt over the years and actually take what they're saying to heart. If black people could solve racism, there wouldn't be racism. If women could solve issues around domestic and sexual violence, they would, and we wouldn't have those issues. If people who are repeatedly the victims of any variety of bad behaviors could solve those issues, don't you think that they would? So when Angel Reese, a black woman from Baltimore, wants to have her moment her way, okay. Is it how I would have done it? No. Do I think that chasing after Caitlin Clark is different than what Clark did to Haley Van Lith in passing? Yeah, I do. Would I be spending my championship moment talking about how Twitter is going to be mad at me and how it's going to range? Also no. But she wasn't wrong. And I'm not Angel Reese. Angel Reese is a 20-year-old black woman in America. That fact alone makes her statistically more at risk to be assaulted on the street, receive negligent health care, or be on the wrong side of any number of other bad things than any white woman or man in any sort of equal position as someone who just won celebrating, their championship. So yeah, was that my favorite celebration I've ever seen? No, but who am I to police her moment? And as long as no unequivocal lines, physical contact, personal attacks, etc. were crossed, to the victor goes the spoils. And the reason this is in the bad category is not some, sly shot at Angel Reese. It's because that this is the talk of the day. Is we're talking about this, not the good, which is an incredible tournament, and how Reese bounced back with a super clutch second half, how her teammates balled out, and all that. But because we're stuck talking about this, which, to be clear, is not Angel Reese's fault. What she did was a reaction to her lived experience, not something she made up. And that needs to be made perfectly clear. I'm not going to police Angel Reese. Her experience is different than mine. What she wants to do to celebrate is different than mine. In the same way that, most athletes who win a Super Bowl might want to go out and go to a club or whatever and pop champagne and whatever, and Andy Reid wants to go home and eat a hamburger. Okay. Whatever floats your boat. Angel Reese wants to clap back at her haters on Twitter? Clap back. More power to you. The ugly from last night, or / yesterday afternoon. The unfortunate reality of the under-resourcing of women's sports is the officiating is terrible. Refs get paid less to work women's games across sports. They've been traditionally less glamorous or less qualified assignments. For instance, like referees in soccer, there's kind of a ranking of leagues, and you get to go up and you pass the NWSL, the best women's league in the world, on the way to MLS, which is like the 9th or 10th best men's league in the world. Because that's the funding situation in American soccer. And when compared to their male counterparts, the officiating that women athlete receives is terrible. And that's not to say that men's officiating is good, because it's mostly also bad because officiating is hard. That said, yesterday was bad by that standard and just a fundamental misunderstanding of the game. It's a title game. We want to see the best players on the floor. And they were consistently, the officials, terrible both ways. Missed calls that should have been called, tic-tac calls that weren't, or that were called. The technical on Caitlin Clark is a joke. The fact that Kim Mulkey didn't get one for being on the floor in the middle of Iowa's offensive sets. Okay, maybe not in the middle, but certainly on the periphery. The fact that she was in the way of an official and made a lot of contact. It's supposed to be an automatic technical. At that point, in the first half, I don't care that it's a title game. You call that early so that she gets off the floor. The inconsistency is maddening. So make no mistake about it. The better team yesterday won the title. Iowa did not defend at a championship level, and LSU hit shots at a literally historic one. But that sucked, and I hope that the investment goes into that part of the game because there's about to be a lot more eyes on it, a lot more often. So what was it like to be in the middle of it? Andrea Carter was on the call for ESPN ABC. She joins us on the Hoffman Show next.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.